Today, we're finally talking about sex. Yes, the elephant in the room. You see, when I first developed the idea to talk about intimacy in Islam, to be honest, it was actually kind of weird for me, to talk about something like this. I talked myself out of it a lot, but I just kept coming back to it. The more and more I kept realizing how significant the role intimacy plays in marriage. So it's not something I can ignore. I actually also have discussed this topic of sex a lot sooner, but I kept dragging my feet and stalling and trying to, first talk about the non-sexual parts, preparing myself and mind for it. Because I'm like, I don't want to be misunderstood, What if I don't say it right? And how do I even say it right? Because growing up as a Muslim and African, there's hardly the opportunity to learn about this from our parents. So talking about this feels strange. We demonize it for so long, and all of a sudden when you get married, they expect you to know everything about it. So it's understandable that a lot of us grew up, feeling shy when it concerns the topic of sex. And understand that in many ways, it has its own advantage, of preventing us from committing some immoral acts while we're a lot younger. And that's why, some of us weren't exposed to it. However, there's also a disadvantage, because the sooner you know about what, you should avoid, it might also help you from avoiding it. So yes, we can agree on the fact that growing up, especially as Africans and, Muslim, our parents could have done a whole lot more in not exposing us too much, but, giving us this proper orientation so we know. And then as one gets to grow older and older and older, you start to get the age-sensitive kind of information, because whether you like it or not, you're going to get that information. So it's either from a good source, a parent, or a bad source, social media or the internet. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Let's get right into it. You're welcome on my journey on becoming a better spouse. For so long we've been shy, for too long we've been silent. But how can you build a beautiful marriage if you're scared to talk about the very thing that's meant to bring you and your spouse closer, to help you increase the mawadda and rahmah? So let me tell you something that might change the perspective about, sex today. Sex is not just about making babies. It's a gift from Allah to build love, to increase affection and satisfy a desire. It's also a gift that if used outside the marriage, it's no longer a gift, it's a curse. Allah says in Surah Al-Isra, Quran chapter 17, verse 32, "Do not go near zina. Indeed, it's an immorality and an evil path." It's not saying do not commit, do not even go near it. Because going near it and committing it is also zina, and it can lead one astray. So if you're flirting, sending nasty pictures to someone that's not your spouse, exchanging dirty and nasty messages, in their DMs, it is also zina. So let's be careful. Let's also remember the hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad tells us that the eyes commit zina, the hands commit zina, and the private parts will confirm or deny it. So let's be careful. So that flirting that you're doing in the DMs is zina of the tongue. The lingering looks at the gym, that's zina of the eyes. So now let's move on to our topic for today. When it comes to the main act of sexual intimacy, we have two main types: having intercourse or making love. Both are allowed, both are beautiful, but they're not really the same thing. See, having intercourse or having sex is mostly quick, physical, spontaneous, and it's usually about satisfying the urge, while making love is mostly emotional, intentional, planned, and satisfying the heart and the body. Men are mostly visually wired for sexual intimacy. They see their wife just innocently walking past them, all jiggly, all pretty, even though in that moment the man's mind might be preoccupied with work or something else. But because he has seen the body, he's already at alert. So it's actually because mostly men are physiologically wired for sex. So it's spontaneous for most men. We see, we like, we're ready. But for sisters, the interest is mostly intellectually based, in other words, psychological. It takes build up, connection, emotional safety, emotional security, to get a woman to be ready and be in the mood, for most women anyway. So that brings us to the question, who should initiate sex more? It can actually never be balanced, because one person will demand more than the other. So not understanding these dynamics can cause a lot of issues. And in order to understand it, let's go back to the two main types I mentioned earlier: having intercourse or and making love. So because of the physiological nature of most men being visually wired to sex, they are mostly interested in having, intercourse rather than making love. It puts them in a situation whereby they are mostly requesting for it. And at times, it might not align with the desires of a woman who needs a lot more to go on. That's why the wife needs to mentally prepare herself to meet the husband halfway by also initiating intercourse, because it's almost a guarantee that the man will be in the mood 99% of the time. So, but when it comes to making love, that is primarily responsibility of the man. The necessary planning, the emotional build-up, it's mostly the man, because women crave emotional connection, not just action. So at times to achieve this, it might take you days to set the mood, set the tempo, set the ambience, working towards a target, so you can get to achieve it. I stated earlier, making love and having intercourse, both are good, but both have their own roles, and let's not neglect them. So that's what I'm going to emphasize again. When it comes to having spontaneous sex, I'll advise women to do more of the initiation, because men will most likely be in the mood whenever you initiate it, as opposed to a man initiating it every time he's in the mood. If he does that, it is most likely not going to meet up with your own desires. So wives should do well to, meet up with their husband and meet them halfway, because if your husband should be initiating it based on the number of times he's in the mood, you would probably get fed up and be tired. But if you're trying to meet up by consciously, intentionally also trying to, because you know that whenever you do, the man will be in the mood. Also going to help, the frequency of the times the man will bother you for it. And, both of you can come to an agreeable, frequency for it. So how often should we engage in intimacy? There's actually no single correct answer for this, because it depends on a number of factors, like the individual preference, the level of libidos of each couple, the needs of each couple, circumstances surrounding it. So in other words, for each couple, for you to get your answer, you guys need to do a lot of communication, observation, and compromise. All right? Because it's only the both of you that can actually agree on, and it's not like you guys need to write it down on the wall that yes, in a week, so number of times. But when you communicate properly with yourself, it helps it to become, it helps you guys to agree on, a frequency that's suitable, a list for both of you. It might not be exact, but at least something close to being comfortable for the both of you. Now let's talk about another component of sex, and that's foreplay. Yes, foreplay. An hadith of the Prophet says, none of you should fall upon your wife like an animal, let there be a messenger between you. There's also another hadith of the Prophet that says, do not, have intercourse with your wife until she has experienced desire like you also have. So all of this is telling us that it is very essential for us to set a precursor before intercourse actually begins, that will put both parties in the mood for desire, and that is what? Foreplay. So if you're skipping foreplay, you're skipping the sunnah. If you're skipping foreplay, you're acting like an animal would. So in order to be a better Muslim, you need to have this connection with your spouse before getting down. So next time you want to have intercourse with your wife, don't rush it. Call, kiss, touch, compliment, build that emotional connection first. All right. So inshallah, I'll be talking more about foreplay, in the future episodes. But now let's talk about, types of activities that makes up sexual intimacy. So I'm going to be classifying them into three main categories: the halal category, the gray area, and the outright haram, forbidden. So we'll be talking extensively on each of these topics as we go forward. But let me just, drop a hint. So what's halal is, the traditional way of having sex with husband and wife, that involve the penetration of both sexual organs where it's supposed to go. And what's gray area is the issue of, oral sex and the issue of using sexual toys. It's a gray area, neither here nor there. We're also going to talk about that inshallah in the future. And what's haram? Pornography, having sex during your wife's menstrual period, having anal sex, outright haram, no questions asked. So we're going to talk about this also extensively in the future for those who don't really understand, because this is just an introductory topic. We'll get to breaking down every of this topic, bit by bit, so you can understand the reason why I had my reservations about, having this discussion, because to be honest, it is kind of weird, but it's necessary for us to talk about this and get to learn this because it's part of our deen. So I want us to know something, that you see, your spouse has a right over you and you cannot deny them that right. They have a financial right, they have a sexual right, they have a right to protection, they have a right to safety, they have so many rights over you. Okay? So Allah has also given the married couple intimacy as a gift. So why are you treating it like it's haram? It's not haram for you to talk about intimacy with your spouse. It's haram to ignore it up until a point that, your marriage suffers. It's haram to seek intimacy outside your marriage. But within your marriage, intimacy is halal for you. So don't be shy about it, okay? So this episode, marks a landmark in our discussion, because so far we'll be talking about the non-sexual part. So from this point forward, we'll start adding a bit of all those, sexual topics, so we can all get to learn more. So stay here. If your spouse has not been watching, this is the time for you to bring them so you can both learn together. So we can all learn together. It's a learning avenue for every one of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our marriage, bless our intimacy, bless our connection, both in this life and in the hereafter. Until I come across your way again, I'm still your favorite boy, Abdurrahman Idris, and thank you for joining me on this journey to becoming a better spouse. May Allah make every one of us better spouses, inshallah. Ameen.